Disclaimer: if anyone knows who or what I'm talking about in this story, please don't bother any of the other people who were involved. A lot of what follows this series of events is speculation on my part, which is another way of saying I'm probably wrong. This is another instance which is going to be difficult to talk about without mentioning certain details, but it remains one of the most bizarre encounters I've ever had in speedrunning. Mostly because it looked for all the world like someone trying to get back at me over a total misunderstanding. To tell this story, I need to go back in time a bit. Back to the saga involving the leaderboard moderator who didn't know much about the game he moderated and refused to change most anything, even if it was actively hurting the community. While that was going on, I was submitting times to 2 other games. Usually there's a grace period that varies between a week and a month for runs to be verified, depending on where you go and how long the runs are. After all, the people who verify these runs are volunteers and have lives outside of playing video games quickly. I asked the leaderboard's moderation team a question about timing the run, and a mod responded. However, they responded with a quote from my Twitter feed, in which I was venting about the laissez-faire moderator from another game's leaderboard, who I had been dealing with for months at this time. I clarified as much to them, but even so, apparently a person who either saw this or was friends with the mods. I don't know if they thought I was lying or if they just thought it looked like an easy record grab or what, but shortly after this exchange took place, that person started posting times, first place times, to the Bloody Roar leaderboards. For those who don't know, speedrunning various categories for Bloody Roar is my way of keeping in touch with the series. This runner was experienced with fighting games, and had a huge list of times for various categories for various other fighters. So at first, I thought they just discovered the series through my profile and was picking it up to run themselves. I realized pretty quickly though that likely wasn't the case. The Bloody Roar series has 5 games in it. This person only posted runs to 4 of them. The 4 games I posted times for. Okay, that could still be a coincidence. These games have multiple categories, and every run they submitted was to the same categories I had times for. There were empty categories they could have easily claimed a top time for, but instead they went for the ones I posted in. Less of a coincidence. Then there was the quality of the runs themselves. For some of them, the video looked fine and the on-screen in-game timer made things like splicing impossible, or at the very least, much harder to do. For others, there was no in-game audio, replaced with incredibly loud techno that clipped and peaked so badly most YouTube poop videos would think it was overkill. On top of the runs not being done on a live stream, all of these videos were just YouTube uploads, and all of them were unlisted on an account that had plenty of public speedruns. The kicker though was the comments put up with the runs, which said such insightful things as "doggo lol." One was in reference to a run where I simply put "Sheena is best girl." The run they posted which beat that run had a comment which read "Marvel best boy." I've seen people get into speedrunning games for a variety of reasons, but this was the first time I saw it happen as what looked like a completely misguided act of vengeance and/or spite. There were a couple instances where I posted better times than them for the Bloody Roar 1 and 2 leaderboards, and within a few days they had a better time to post. This was around the time I realized what they were doing for the PS1 games in particular. That is, they were using either an extremely outdated or badly optimized emulator that loaded each fight a second and a half faster, effectively giving them a 12-second head start in real time. Considering that these runs generally only last 3 minutes or so, the bulk of that is loading each fight, and the in-game time rule didn't exist yet, that's a massive advantage. This is actually a common point of frustration with leaderboards that allow emulators with real-time runs, particularly for PS1 games, as a shockingly high amount of moderators can't wrap their heads around why not accounting for different emulators loading things much faster than others, or the original console release, might be a problem when trying to determine the fastest runs. All of this is weird enough, but it gets even weirder. Part of submitting videos and times involves saying when the run took place. Even though these runs were posted the same day or the day after their unlisted YouTube uploads, the submissions listed the run dates as happening 6 or 7 months earlier, including the times which came after my better runs. Coincidentally, this was a time period which, when looking at the timeline for world record progression, wiped out all of my times and everyone else's times from the charts, making it look like they held the record almost the entire time. By this point, there were so many different factors that simply didn't add up or were insanely suspicious about these runs that I confronted them, specifically about the weird dates submitted for the runs. They were defensive, though not confrontational, asking if they could continue submitting times with this bizarre dating system. I explained the effect this had on the record progression chart, and not long after that, this person pulled the majority of their runs from the leaderboards. It wasn't too long after this that the timing rules for Bloody Roar 1 and 2 changed. As a result, and to demonstrate the advantage their emulator gave them, their formerly first place time for one of those games dropped out of the top 5. By then, I'd beaten that time using PSXGen, something I hadn't used for emulating games since about 2011. This seemed to be the emulator they were using, as it loaded each fight at about the same speed. And just to further emphasize the emulator advantage, my best time on console was 7 seconds faster in-game, but 10 seconds slower in real time than this emulator run. I feel like I should wrap up with some sort of lesson or big takeaway from this, but to be honest, I've got nothing. This is just a bizarre little something that ended almost as quickly as it happened. The only thing I can see taking away from this is that anyone in charge of a leaderboard needs to be both vigilant and open-minded when it comes to emulation. Not just in accepting it, but policing it. That and, don't assume everything is about you. And I'm aware of the irony of me saying this in a video where I assumed a slew of events was about something I did, so I guess I'm not taking my own advice.